Welcome back to the Forge and Foundry Podcast. I'm Tony Swatton. Kerry's not with me today. He's actually casting some bronzes for me for a movie. But I have Jeff Pringle visiting, and he's a pretty phenomenal smith. We're going to be talking about some of the Wootz cast high carbon steel that he's been making, as well as some of the other elements. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you.
Actually, how did you get started on this?
I was into historical reenactment, and I was also into craft processes, and I realized that none of the steels that you could buy in the store looked anything like the steels that they were using 500, 1,000 years ago.
And so you started 500, 1,000 years ago? Because I've only goes like 40 years back.
Well, I started researching how to make metal that was like the metal that people used back then, so that I could make things that looked more like the things that people used back then. And so that got me into smelting. The problem about trying to smelt metal back in the 90s was that there was no information out there.
And there was no internet.
And there was no internet, or nascent internet. And so you really were scratching, just like scrabbling for any little scrap of information. And the only stuff about smelting was experimental archaeologists who had degrees in archaeology, but really had never done blacksmithing in their lives. And so they had a very unclear concept on that, like they weren't really able to do the practical stuff.
And when did like Al Pendre and I think Steve Schwartzer and some of the other people, what was it, Voorhoven or do you...
so...
that was in the late 70s, early 80s kind of thing, where they rediscovered pattern-welded Damascus and possibly Wootz?
Yeah, Pendre and Voorhoven worked together. The article that Voorhoven published, or... how would you pronounce his name?
Voorhoven? I don't know.
Voorhoven,
We're probably both getting it wrong, but we know what we're talking about.
The Scientific American article that he published that sort of like let everybody know that it's fait accompli was in 2001, I believe.
Oh, okay.
And so at that point, he had been working with Pendre for a decade, I believe, if not more. But the funny thing about, there's a Baltimore connection as well, because back in 84 or 86,
was Bill
Wally.
Oh, Wally Yater was doing it?
Wally Yater published in the Anvil's Ring a series of articles on how they made Wootz steel back in the day.
And Wally would be a wonderful person to talk to because he's local and... a character.
And when he saw me making Crucible steel here, he went out of his way to photocopy
his old Anvil's Ring,
the Anvil's Ring articles, and he really was the guy who did the hard research at first and started telling people what to do.
Yeah, the Anvil's Ring that Jeff and I are talking about is the newsletter from ABANA, the Artist Blacksmith Association in North America, and I've been a member since the early 90s and published a few things in there, which, just showing off. So
it's a great organization.
Yeah, very fun to deal with.
Although not so much fun. They used to allow anvil shooting at their events, but then they finally had to outlaw that.
Well, it's the insurance is terrible. So anvil shooting is they would have a wrought iron anvil, and they would put a black powder charged gunpowder in the hardy hole or something and put another anvil on top of it, touch a fuse to it, and launch the anvil on top. I mean, hundreds of feet in the air. So
there's a lot of infrastructure involved in smelting, like building a furnace that can get hot enough to melt steel. It's not a trivial pursuit, as it were. But I figured out a way that, with a couple $100 worth of materials and a couple hours worth of time, you can get molten steel in your backyard.
It's pretty incredible. And what do we call it? The radioactive marshmallow?
Yeah, the atomic marshmallow seems to be the name that it has acquired.
So you're taking
ceramic wool insulation,
right,
and just a couple inches of that will reflect enough heat. You pump in propane and air.
right,
And with just a couple inches of refractory wool, you can get up to 3,000 degrees.
and then most iron is melting at what, about 2,900 degrees Fahrenheit?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think pure iron, so the melting temperature varies with carbon content. And I think pure iron is up above 3,000, but most steels are in the 2,800 to 3,000 range.
Okay, yeah. And so these are pieces of Wootz steel, Crucible steel that you've cast in your nuclear marshmallow.
Yeah. There is a common term for steel that has a pattern that is Damascus, and then there's a common term for steel that has a pattern that was made in a crucible, and that's Wootz.
Right. And from what I understand, the Damascus term came about during the Crusades when the Crusaders were bringing their pattern welded wrought iron and lower carbon steel wrapped together like a Sutton Hoof kind of sword, and they were fighting against a higher carbon Wootz steel.
Yeah.
And they were purchasing it out of Damascus, Syria, and so they called it Damascus, and it's carried through the years.
Yeah,
so.
Although that also might be apocryphal because anything with a pattern gets called Damascus.
Right.
And the garment trade, the fabric trade was huge compared to the steel trade or the sword trade.
Yeah.
And they made Damascene cloth.
And you'll have like a chatoyancy, a cat's eye effect shimmering to it that you'll get with the higher laminate stuff.
Yeah, and like they would etch brass things with decorative patterns, and they would call that damask pattern.
Okay.
So anything with a pattern, like Damascus basically means pattern. It doesn't mean steel.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Well,
but it is also true that it was a trading center for swords, and that is where a lot of people went for their swords.
Well, can you explain what these ugly little hockey pucks look like?
Well, it's the freshest steel you'll ever see. These are, we were running the furnace and trying out, just sort of throwing whatever was to hand in there to see if we could make crucible steel out of it. But of course, we're working on empirical knowledge that we've acquired over the years of this hammering. And so this one is wrought iron, historic old wrought iron, and hematite iron ore. And so at the same time as the wrought iron is melting, the ore is reducing from iron ore to iron metal. And then the iron metal is absorbing enough carbon to become steel.
What did you estimate the carbon content was on the larger piece?
That's looking like 1.5.
Okay. Carbon. So in modern mono steels that we use for swords, like for instance, we use 1075. That's a medium carbon. It's a carbon steel with 75/100% carbon. This is twice that content.
Yeah.
And if you go into 01 steel, that's maybe up to 95% carbon, where this is still, half again more carbon, which would make it too brittle in most things. But with this dendritic Wootz,
it segregates so that the carbides are like swaddled in perlite.
Right.
And basically with all that extra carbon, you get a lot of extra carbides. So this is basically the same thing as 1095 steel or 1075 steel.
But with additional carbon.
A whole bunch of extra carbides because of the additional carbon.
Right.
And
And then the smaller piece right in here, this one you started with virgin iron sands, magnetite, correct?
No, that's a hematite. If it was magnetite, so hematite is I don't know.
Iron oxide.
It's an iron oxide, and then magnetite is an iron oxide that has much more iron in it.
Okay.
So I can't remember the exact percentages, but hematite, you're looking at maybe 50% by weight iron in the compound.
Right.
And then whatever else is in the ore, aside from the iron ore, there's always some rock.
Yeah.
And then the magnetite, you're up in the 60%.
Okay.
So it's more, you get a better yield with magnetite
Right.
than you do with hematite. But on the other hand, hematite smelts more easily.
And
So the hematite ore that this was made out of was brought by somebody who rescued a bunch of iron hematite ore
along the railroad tracks?
No, from a subdivision was going in.
Oh, okay.
And they just happened to notice the bulldozers had
Hit a seam of
hit
ore.
a seam of ore. So he
Yeah.
went in there and filled up a bunch of buckets.
Yeah, I was wondering. I saw that I was working on a cutlass, so I didn't have a chance to watch you much when you were creating this, but it's always fascinating. One of the funny things I like about hematite is the derivation of the name. You know, hematite meaning blood matters. So if you take the hematite ore and you rub it on a touchstone, a piece of porcelain or something, it'll leave a red streak looking like blood. So that's where the Greeks and Romans came up with the terminology for hematite. And magnetite is magnetic. There we go. So exactly. So, so these could be forged into all kinds of things. You've done. I've seen some daggers and swords and other elements.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and the cool thing about making Damascus steel that has a pattern this way is you don't have to do any folding.
Right.
Because the Crucible steel process, you take the rough metal from the smelter. This is historically what they did. They weren't smelting from ore. They were smelting old metal, or not, well, sometimes old metal, nails and horseshoes, but also, you know, the crap from the Bloomery smelter that you couldn't just make iron out of, they would throw into a crucible and melt it. And when you melt it, everything, then because of gravity, the iron sinks to the bottom.
right, and the impurities, slag would float to the top.
Yeah, the impurities drop out via gravity once everything's molten. And so you avoid all the folding that is necessary for refining it without a crucible.
Yeah, and when I've noticed when you look at traditional, you know, Islamic weapons, you know, that you would have the watered steel and the different patterns going through there, but it's not folded. It's just kind of in the process of forging getting their rose pattern or their ladder pattern kind of into the piece.
Well, the interesting thing for me, or one of the interesting things, there are so many interesting things about this topic, it's hard to not go off on a million different tangents. But because the crucible process is just another way of refining metal from the smelter, they were also doing the pattern welding at the same time.
Yeah.
They were just like, you know, if the ingot looked really good, it would go to the sword makers. And if it was not so good, it would go to the scissor makers, or they'd start folding it in with other metal to make regular Damascus or pattern welded Damascus. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. And then you started doing this because you're interested in it. The same thing, we all get into it. We want the stuff. It's not available. We figure out how to make it and do that. How long have you been doing this? When did you come up with your...
I think it was in '99 that
Okay.
I had my first successful crucible melt.
Okay. So
I had been trying for a few years before that to do Bloomery furnace type stuff. And the interesting thing about that is it takes a couple of people a couple of days. You got to build the furnace. You got to chop a couple 100 pounds of charcoal so that it's all the right size, so that the furnace burns correctly. And then it's a 7-hour run.
Right.
And so you're shoveling charcoal and ore into this furnace.
It's pretty exhausting. Yeah,
sparks.
I've seen, So, and the terminology for doing this is what, archaeometallurgy?
Archaeometallurgy,
Yeah, I mean, so taking something, ancient techniques and, you know, reinventing them and seeing how they made them originally. Because this is 2,000 years of, ferrous iron and steel technology,
Yeah.
so it's pretty wild.
Yeah. And this, doing it in a crucible is much less labor intensive. Once you have that furnace that can get you up to that temperature, and if you have a crucible that will withstand that temperature, then all of a sudden having clean tool steel, like stuff that you can make a very sharp edge with, is a lot easier. It's not a team effort anymore necessarily.
So this is kind of repurposed bloomery iron and wrought iron for the larger puck, and then this one was the
pure
hematite ore.
Yeah.
Now, a few years ago, I remember you also incorporated Meteorite with Adam Savage. Was that for Tested or for Mythbusters for his?
That was for Tested.
Yeah. So, and then you made...
Or actually some kind of project in between the two.
Yeah, and so you were able to work with Adam doing one of his pet projects of making Excalibur, but out of a
meteorite, yeah.
What meteorite source did you use?
We used Campo de Cielo.
Okay, from Argentina.
Yeah.
So, I've done some forging with Campo de Cielo, and I prefer Gibeon, but it's a lot more expensive. Gibeon from Namibia. So...
The cool thing about meteorites just so happens that the ones that are lowest in nickel content, hence easiest to forge, and Campo de Cielo is down around 4 or 6%, depending on what part of it you measure, nickel.
Yeah.
So it's much easier to work than the stuff that's a higher. More nickel means harder to work.
Right. And you laminated that, with a higher carbon steel?
Yeah, 1095.
Okay. And how many layers did you end up forging it?
We were folding it a bunch, but Adam wanted to be involved in every process, and so he had to actually be there. But we have a shooting schedule, so it was 3 very intense days, and we folded it 5 or 6 times.
Okay.
You can tell how densely it got because of the pattern in the steel.
Yeah, so you got a much finer kind of laminate there.
Yeah, the number of folds.
Yeah, and you did that at the Crucible in Oakland. Yeah,
the art school where fire arts are king.
Okay, cool. The unique pattern when you cut a meteorite, polish it off, and then in turn etch it with ferric chloride or another mordant, and you have this kind of very cross-grain pattern, the Widmanstadt pattern.
Right.
And that was named after Widmanstadt in Germany in the 1800s.
Right.
You determined that?
A metallurgist or a metallographer, a guy who liked to look at surfaces.
Yeah.
But that pattern only happens with cooling down gradually over millions and millions of years.
Yeah, or billions,
billions, really.
Yeah.
But of course, I don't know how long it takes a planet to cool down.
Yeah.
But there's no way to replicate that pattern without that very, very slow cooling.
Or with an etching pattern.
Oh, right. You can fake it for sure.
Oh, I faked it for a Marvel movie and put a Widmanstadt pattern on a 5160 steel blade, and then black oxidized it. And,
nice.
And it looks like a meteorite, but not quite, so,
sure.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's kind of fun with meteorites. I'm looking at the table, too. You've got some Japanese sword guards, Tsubas.
Yeah.
And this is out of what type of iron or steel? What is this made out of?
So this is out of Cor-Ten steel, which is the steel that was invented to rust and then stop rusting.
Okay, kind of like wrought iron.
Like wrought iron of old, but this time it's steel that has 4% copper in it, and it rusts until it gets to a certain point, and then the rust becomes chemically passive and it doesn't rust anymore. And it was designed for shipping containers, but they make bridges and buildings out of it.
Right.
And it's a darling of architects who are doing like sort of artistic finishes.
Right.
They like using Cor-Ten because it's a very textural element that they can have at their disposal.
It's one of the ferrous alloys I haven't played with yet. So, I mean, it's not that common.
Yeah, so Japanese sword guards are an incredible treasure trove of very exacting metalwork.
Yeah.
The things they do are just so expressive and beautiful, and shows such skill in execution that they're wonderful, challenging things to make and try and make well. And I've traditionally worked in iron because that's the traditional material, but I had to deal with patinas on Cor-Ten steel for an architectural reason, and that got me thinking, well, I've done a lot of patinas on Japanese sword guards.
Right.
What if I could, I wonder what sort of effect Cor-Ten steel would have, since it's designed to have a patina.
So all three of these are more traditional pieces, pretty much. I mean, this is mostly what you're going to see is an oval or a round, with the cutout for the blade to slide through.
Yeah, and then other stuff as well. Like sometimes they have cutouts for a hairpin or a side knife.
Right, and you would have like a little ovals cut on either side sometimes.
Yeah. And one of the wonderful things that the Japanese are able to do because of the precise care that they do things with is just use a file and get a finished surface just by the precision with which they file. And so that's an exploration of that technique a little bit. But this is also a Cor-Ten steel piece that I used the Japanese patina formula on.
Okay.
And you can see that it's a rich black, very much like the Japanese Tsubas.
Yeah.
But then Cor-Ten steel also wants to have its own patina, and it's designed to have a very specific, stable patina on it.
Is that what you got with the the electrical plug one?
Yeah. Well, the other thing, so the Japanese Tsubas are, the height of them was the Edo period back in the 1800s.
Yeah.
And a lot of the forms and things that they were illustrating, because they're very narrative pieces, were germane to the culture at the time. Okay. And so, the contemporary opera stars are often depicted, or, the stories, the folk tales of the current time, and, the architecture and the landscape. But that doesn't necessarily speak to our current culture.
Right.
And so I've thought about installing, or doing Tsubas that are of things that mean something to us.
More of a modern narrative.
Yeah, even if it's as lowly as a
electrical outlet.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's obvious. And you said you got this from a pattern book of Tsubas that was something very close to that, or
the biohazard symbol is an exact. There's an exact copy of it in a Japanese design book published by Dover called Japanese Design Motifs, I think. And it's just clan crests.
Yeah.
Hundreds of pages of clan crests, and this very exact biohazard kind of symbol is in there. But of course that resonates with us as a symbol of scary things, of a bacterial nature.
Exactly.
But I mean, whose sword isn't necessarily a biohazard? What's it designed to do?
Right. And the patina on this is kind of like a russet brown. Is that Is this more of a traditional color of that you're going to get with Cor-Ten, or is this more of a Japanese?
This is the Cor-Ten expressing itself as it was designed to. And the funny thing is, when you're patinating regular iron or steel, it just keeps on rusting, and you can manipulate how it looks by how deeply you rust it. And you have a wide palette of potential options. But if you just go with the, patinas develop by wetting and drying cycles. And if you do that to Cor-Ten steel, then very quickly, not very quickly, it takes days, hundreds of cycles. But you get to that point.
You also collect historical artifacts from Eastern Europe, and I've seen some of the the spears and axes and stuff, and just seeing the grain of the metal on how they've folded it and forged that together.
Yeah.
It's just fascinating.
Yeah,
So,
part of that attempt to look for, or to get the ability to create objects that were like what they were making back then
Right.
would be to take a very intimate look at an artifact and actually sand some of it away to look at the number of times they folded
Right.
their material and what the carbon content is and where the carbon content is distributed.
And you really kind of started smelting iron in, you said, like 1999. And for me, when I was making armor in my teens, I was also living in England and back and forth, and I would go to the Wallace Collection or the Victorian Albert or the Tower of London.
Yeah.
And at that point, I had no access to anything. But now, after, I don't know, I tell people I'm more of a, I never expected to be a role model. I was expected to be a bad example. So I have been given access to historical pieces and handled, like the Maximilian fluted helmet that Henry VIII had at the Royal Armories, and you look in the inside and you see how the armorer, Conrad Susenhofer, has changed his direction and corrected it, and there's hammer marks on the inside. The outside looks absolutely perfect, and they make all kinds of posters and things out of it, but to actually handle something that you only read about in a book as a kid is phenomenal.
Yeah.
And it's got to be the same way with some of your artifacts. It was.
And you learn so much. And
Yeah.
There are those rare instances where you can see the remnants of file marks, and you can tell that the guy was a little upset and he was moving a line over. You can really get into the mind of the person who was making that file stroke 1,000 years ago.
Well, and it's the same thing nowadays. I mean, I can look at some of your work, and it's distinctive of a Pringle style. And you can see some of the stuff that I do, and it's kind of like, oh, that looks like something I did.
Sure.
So, I mean, it's we all have our own brushstrokes as craftspeople and artists in the thing.
Yeah.
So Jeff, what current projects do you have that you're excited about?
Well, I'm doing a bunch of smelting-related things that are kind of cool and kind of unusual. I recently went and met an author whose name you'd recognize and collected ore with him. And then because of my furnace is kind of an instant furnace, I can build one anywhere. We went to his backyard and made the metal in his backyard.
Yeah.
And now I'm forging a sword out of that metal that we made in his backyard from ore he collected.
Right.
That's kind of cool.
And that's also based on a description of the sword that you're making from one of his writings?
Novels.
Yeah. Okay. That's always really fun. And I love that when I have like animators come in and they draw something, and then I create it, and then they're physically able to handle tangible things that they've only put on paper.
Yeah.
And it's got to be the same kind of thing with him. He must have been giddy. And especially helping to make it. That's got to be even better. So.
Yeah, and just the alchemy of taking rock or sand and putting through this process where it becomes metal that you can form into objects of great power.
Yeah.
It's amazing, and most people can't even conceive of it until they're actually doing it, and then it's like something they've done.
Well, and not this one because it's magnetite or hematite, but when you're collecting iron sands, you're putting a magnet in a plastic bag and walking along the beach near San Francisco.
That is a way to do it, but since I've been doing it since the turn of the century, I know where to go where I can just take a shovel and have it be 95% pure.
Right.
So I do my collecting with a shovel, and then I do a magnetic refining when I get home to get rid of the ilmenite, because that's a titanium ore that's present in the magnetite.
Okay. And that would be similar to the it's like Verhoeven. I'm going to screw up the name, but the Tamahagane, the Japanese steel they use on the swords, is Tamahagane?
Tamahagane. Hi.
Okay. All right. Hi. And from what I understand, and I was talking to you about this yesterday, with being in the Ring of Fire across from Japan in California, we're going to have a similar ore that they're going to be collecting in the Japanese islands that has the ilmenite titanium oxides in the
There's some
iron
similar
ore.
similar geology going on.
Right. Yeah.
But anywhere that has granite mountains will have streams that are full of black sand, and most of that is iron ore.
And so you're going to take, is it a graphite or what type of crucible are you using?
I am using clay graphite crucibles.
Okay.
Which they're good because they're cheap. Right. And iron smelting and melting iron, you can't really buy crucibles that are designed for that.
Right.
So you're sort of exceeding the parameters of design for the crucible just by doing this, and so they don't last long.
Well, you were able to get 5 smelts yesterday, right? 5 pieces.
Yeah, but we burned a couple of crucibles doing it.
Oh, okay. I was going to ask. And then, so you're also going to add calcium carbonate to it to kind of lift out some of the silica in the sand.
When you're smelting ores, you want to have a balanced slag, which helps control the chemistry of the metal at the end. And if your impurity of the ore is silica, you add calcium carbonate because that balances. One's an acid, one's a base at temperature. Okay. And they balance each other out.
And then you're
beach
also
sand, you add some calcium.
And then a lot of times I've seen you add like a broken shards of a glass bottle to add like a flux surface on it to stop it from further oxidation, correct?
Yeah. Glass melts pretty quickly, and it ensures that because I use charcoal as a carbon source, it makes sure that all that doesn't burn out before the ore comes up to temperature.
Okay, excellent. And just in a small barbecue size, mobile setup, it's pretty incredible. I mean, even, you've done it at my shop and didn't burn a hole in the asphalt. So, Jeff, I think I met you here in Baltimore at an invitational hammer-in that Kerry had thrown back in I want to say around 2009 or 10, and you were doing the same thing with the smelted Wootz. How long have you known Kerry?
Oh, a long time. We met back when we were in high school, and we were both sort of tangentially involved in the local Renaissance Festival.
Okay.
And then I moved up to Boston and then out to California, and so we didn't really have much contact. But then both of us independently came around to being swordsmiths, and just due to our both having been from this area and both ending up with swords, we re-met up because of that.
And in completely different ways.
I
mean, with making your own metal and then forging it out to making a quality product in the United States to compete with India and Chinese-made, Etsy swords. So. So, Jeff, if someone wanted to get into doing what you're doing of RKO metallurgy or bladesmithing, what recommendations would you have?
Your local Abana chapter or Abana-affiliated blacksmithing is a great way to learn basic hammer skills, which you're going to need to do anything else. And to learn about the history of patterned metal and how to smelt it. It's kind of difficult.
Trial and error.
Although Bloomery smelting is really covered pretty darn well now by Lee Souter with his website.
Yeah, it's and like Lee's stuff is phenomenal. When I'm doing demonstrations at museums, I have one of your pucks of Wootz steel to show that, and a chunk of Bloomery iron that Lee has made.
Yeah.
And you can see the whole kind of spongy porosity before it's been consolidated and forged into a solid billet on the end. It's kind of unique.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so far there isn't a like one-stop shopping where, like, if you want to know about Bloomery smelting, go to Lee Souter's website. Is a very concise thing, but with Crucible steel production, it's still a little bit amorphous, and you have to dig around a little bit.
I think I was talking to someone earlier, and they said there is a Wootz Society or something. I'm not familiar with it, and I don't know how much information they have, but I would, like you said, I would recommend starting off with a BANA, the Artist Blacksmith Association North America. Find your local affiliate, see what you can learn from that, and get into the blade smithing aspect, or stock removal to grind away everything that doesn't look like a knife.
Yeah.
And
a legit process.
Yeah.
I mean, especially working with modern materials where they're designed to be anisotropic, responsive to stress in every direction equally.
Yeah.
Whereas the historical materials were, if you forged it to shape, you were actually, getting the impurities to line up in ways that strengthened the object.
Right.
Or you were managing the weaknesses inherent in the object so that it still was an effective tool. But these days, grinding a blade out of commercially bought metal is definitely the way to go.
Homogeneous mono steel is designed for
consistent product.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, well, it's been a pleasure talking to you, Jeff. Where can people find you if they want to find out more information?
Oh, my name is out there. I typically don't use aliases. So jeffpringle.com would be the place to go.
Great. Well, it's been a pleasure. I mean, I've
Thank you.
known you for like 10 years, and now I'm learning a lot more. So
Great.
And thank you for listening and watching to us at Forge and Foundry Podcast, and look forward to more in the future.
Click the logo to subscribe, or click one of the videos to see more here on the Baltimore Knife and Sword channel, or go to Almy and watch Man at Arms.